That's life. Okay, it was easy today. Today is the 15th of May 2022, and I continue reading Life in Spirit, Harry Edwards' book about the afterlife. It was published in 1976, and it is his story. He says in the sleeve notes here, this is the story of John and Mary, any John, any Mary, brother and sister, husband and wife, sweethearts, friends, the story of you and me. But with a difference. John and Mary have died and have entered into their new life in spirit. He ran a beautiful sanctuary in Borrowlea in Surrey, and that's him here. 1976 this was published. I don't know when this was. Anyway, I found it unexpectedly, and as it is a beautifully signed copy, which I bought, I don't know, a decade ago and never read, I thought I read it now, and I continue with chapter 10. Here we go. Spiritual progression and organizations. When one considered that all manner of people, the gentle, turbulent, frivolous, and learned, orderly, and insane, enter into their spirit life in an unending stream, each one needing a special welcome and guidance according to his or her special need, then a high measure of organization and experience is required to meet with whatever need arises. One can try to imagine the volatile situation when an earthly disaster occurs, sending hundreds of people suddenly and without any preparation into a new life. But where there is organization, there is leadership. From our very limited glimpsing into spirit life, with its orderly economy, the arts, sciences, the professions, and the use of energies, there must be a great need for teachers and masters of the arts to give instruction to those who are seeking to acquire knowledge and advancement. Over these, superior minds are necessary to correlate any one section of endeavor with the others to arrive at conclusions. For no doubt it is in this way, by trial and error, step by step, that total progress is made. It is through such studies that governing precepts are based on truths capable of being demonstrated. So when a new truth emerges, it becomes an integral part of life. John asked Mary how it was that she was permitted to choose such a wonderful site for her house. For her house. And what was there to stop another person building another in front of it, and thus obstructing the view of the countryside? Mary told John that there was an overseeing mind in every locality, or with a group of people large or small, a kind of ombudsman who served the communal interests and to whom any problems could be taken or receive a permission. His ruling was invariably accepted, for the ombudsman would be one greatly experienced in the operation of spirit laws in their interpretation. In the unlikely event of his ruling being challenged, the problem could be reviewed by one of the masters, whose decision would be final. Thus it was, with the permission given to Mary, she was able to have her house built in such a delightful setting. She went on to say that while everyone had the full right to express their free will and no one was under the control or jurisdiction of any other person, they did not offend against the liberty and free action of anyone else. For someone to defy the ruling of the local administrator and attempt to build a new house which would offend Mary would be contravening this law. But, said John, I have seen no policeman to show to how could someone be stopped them from building a house anywhere he wanted to. Mary was able to answer his query. Am I stopped? No. Sorry. 2. We have no policemen and no prisons. We live in accord with one another, under guidance from wise minds. Should there be a person who's wont to act independently in defiance of the rules and wishes of the community, he would find himself isolated, for no other would cooperate with him. He could not build a house without the cooperation of the builders and all the other scientists and services who would be concerned with it. So, John dear, why let your mind be troubled with such things which do not happen? On another occasion they were attracted to a church of simple design. It was small, yet possessed a personal appeal of itself. It was as if it was welcoming them with open arms. They went inside. The interior had the beauty of simplicity. There were no symbols or artistry in design. There was no altar or headpiece as much as such. But the center of the church there But from the center of the church there was a radiance of golden warmness and colors which John could not put a name to, not having seen them before. In front of the radiance a man sat dressed in white. He beckoned them to come close and sit with him. They did so, and as they looked at his face, it conveyed an impression of inner holiness and exceeding wisdom, and this made them lower their eyes as if they were too lowly to be able to look at him. In a soft voice the man said, "I'm a teacher, my name is Beulah, Beulah, but be not afraid, for I have been waiting for you. Neither of you has been here very long, but as you are now together again, I am sent to help you. Your efforts to seek the spiritual values in life have been noted, and you are making progress. How can I help you? What is it you desire to know? We are already in your debt for allowing us to be here with you. You possess great knowledge, and you must have traveled far receiving wisdom from the celestial holy ones. I have only just left my earthly life, and am very new to everything here. How can I be like you? What must I do to understand what you know, and how can I help others as you are helping us now?" Beulah replied, "To answer your question fully, you will need to travel with life's ways, as I have done. There's no short answer. We should need to travel backwards to the time when God gave the laws of creation, but that would take too long a time. Perhaps, however, we can go back to the time of man's awakening of his spiritual consciousness in your more recent times. This would be when people were freed from slavery, or from being under the dictatorship of one man, to the changing of religious outlooks, from persecution and torture to the care of the aged and the infirm, to the protection of children from exploitation, to the acknowledgement that man has responsibility to his brother man, and from this to all men, whether they be of color or another, of one color or another, and then perhaps to the awareness of a growing responsibility towards their lesser brethren, the animal kingdom. We must guide the people and give direction to leaders of thought on earth, and to change the code of values on which civilization has rested. These are built upon greed of power, love of material possessions, and to profit regardless of the suffering it may give to others. There are many good souls in earthly life who are advocating these truths of love, responsibility, and serenity, with the knowledge that nothing can be destroyed, and particularly life, that the spiritual heritage lies before everyone. As these truths become known and accepted, the physical ideology will draw closer to that of spirit, so that the change in the earthly code of values will progressively overcome the ignoble ways of humankind during their worldly life. Perchance, then, one of the ways in which both of you can serve both God and man will be found in your directing good influences to those with whom you can establish some degree of communication." "That is a wonderful idea," said John, "but should we not have a need for training in how to advise people and to learn the way to communicate? And would that not take up a great deal of time?" "Time here is relative to that which is concerns," replied Beulah. "On earth everything is measured by time. Here there is no such measurement. Periods of activity are noted by the change which has taken place as a result of the activity. Progress here can be of all proportions if one tries to equate the change with physical time. When there is a set purpose to accomplish, such as your gaining with knowledge of both the physical laws and ours here, the amount of time used can be comparatively very brief. Much depends upon the teacher and the student. Let me tell you a story to illustrate this." Sorry, it's annoying. I don't know why this keeps popping up. "A newcomer like you, John, was not content to study with the other beginners, so he went to the master of the Hall of Records. of learning. Sorry. So he went to the master of the Hall of Learning and requested to be taken under his tutelage in order that he would learn all there was to know much sooner. The master took this young man to his laboratory, placed a stool in front of a bowl containing a single goldfish, gave him a pencil and paper, and instructed him to get up on the stool and look at the fish. Write down all that you can see. The puzzled young man dutifully made notes, observing the size, shape, color, and motion of the goldfish. He finally took the notes to the master with a tense comment. "I am finished." "Oh yes," said the master, "you are the young man I gave the task of looking at the fish. How long have you been doing this?" "1 hour," answered the young man, for he could understand physical timings. "A whole hour. Well, go back and sit in front of that fish bowl for 6 months. At the end of that time you should know something about a fish, and I can use you in my work." The student was appalled. 6 months, he cried. What in the life of this fish is there I have not seen already?" "The fish itself," was the reply. "You have only looked at it. You have not seen it." After 4 months of sitting on the stool, watching the goldfish 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 13 weeks, he suddenly sat up and took his first real notice about the fish. He had suddenly discovered that it was like no other living creature he had beheld before. He thought, "What is a fish anyhow? And can I possibly learn anything from the behavior this particular fish exhibits?" This awakened his interest, and when at the completion of his 6 months' probation the master finally said he might be relieved of his task of watching the single little fish, the boy replied, "I do not want to leave off looking at this fish. I'm just beginning to learn so much about it." "Well," replied the master, "you are making progress, my son. Sit right here for 6 years and you will probably know more about a fish than any of my professors." It was a statement of the greatest wisdom, and it can well be applied to all who seek to know what further wisdom there is to know. The development of spiritual gifts never ends, for we cannot reach perfection, for that is God, but we should always try. John thanked Bula for his story and told him they would be happy and content to commence at the beginning and be patient, but there was another question on which he would value guidance. "Ask away, my son," said Bula. "I know there are many religions, of which Christianity is but one, and even this is disunited with different beliefs within it. Can you tell me, please, which of all the religions is the one which will best help us towards our spiritual progression?" "Your teachers have been walking on a tightrope trying to maintain balance with the Bible in one hand and the science in the other," said Bula. "They made little progress, for while being able to maintain a degree of equity, they lost sight of where they wished to arrive. You were told that God had created man, but it took a man named Darwin to discover how he had done it. You were taught that the world with all its living species were created by God in 6 days, and to justify this, your scientists say that to God 1 day was 1,000 years, and 1,000 years 1 day, that time was relative. Your scientists came to the same conclusion as that in Genesis. Life began in the ocean, and the salt sea swarmed with life. The air was filled with winged species, and the day came when creeping things and all the beasts of the earth began to move on dry land. Genesis agrees insofar that man was the last of all to come into existence in a ready-made world of plants and beasts. Everything rotated and ticked. Everything functioned before man, but not through any effort of his own. No errors had been committed in the complex design of the Creator. According to Genesis, God was satisfied with the world as He created it, so that on the 7th day He stopped creating and went to rest. Man was left somewhat naked, but well provided for, like any bird or beast before him. God was merciful and would not let the human species He had created starve. Your scientist agrees with this, too, for man could not have evolved from any beast of nature had nature not favored him and provided ample for his survival. This was when man had lost touch with his teachers. This was when conflict began, conflict between the creator and the created, and conflict between the right and left hand of the juggling teachers. For whereas God was pleased with his job, man was not. God was sure he had given man a perfect environment, but man did not agree. While God rested, man took over. Man wanted progress from paradise. Man too worked 7 days and thought he pleased God if he too rested on the seventh. Man quarrelled among his fellows about whether they were to rest on Sunday, or on Saturdays, or on Fridays. But whether they were Christians, Jews, or Muslims, they hurried back to work on the 8th day and continued their struggle to make a better world. For centuries God rested while man invented wheels and cars. God did not think of creating dynamite or the need for nuclear fusion. Did he realize his own shortcomings when he saw that man could do? Religious adults seem to believe that God had guided man's brains to ensure that every step we took meant progress. Did he approve of man's remodeling of everything he had done? Man was taught that God left him responsible with ability and freedom to build and destroy, to advance and retreat, to rejoice and suffer, guided by the intelligence, intuition, and conscience he had given. Surely this had to be correct. It was true that the Creator would reward or punish in afterlife according to man's behavior. Bueller paused for a moment or two, and then he said, "Bear with me and I will tell you another story. This is a story told in our nurseries for young children, but it will have within it the answer to your question. With the giving to the earth of his laws of creation, God established early man upon it, and he built for all the church of all souls. The church was of exceeding beauty. The spirit material of its walls radiated warmth and love. The surfaces were smooth like alabaster. Within the church was richness beyond compare, portraying the art of the sculptor, engraver, painter, and all of these were the symbols of their arts and the spiritual pursuits of man. There was gold and silver, rich gems of all kinds. The church was the personification of reverence, love, sacrifice, and devotion. It was God's church for all souls. Those who were able to attend represented all sections of the human family, the yellow people from the east, the dark-skinned folk from the hot lands, and their white brethren too. All worshipped together, and all were as brothers and sisters. The time came when God gave to man his free will, making him responsible for his way of life according to his conscience. And with this there grew up the enjoyment of power and the love of possession, to be more strong and affluent than his neighbor. It was only natural that each section of people claimed the Church of All Saints as their own. Soon quarreling developed, as each took what he thought he was entitled to. The gold and silver ornamentation and jewels disappeared, as did the wonderful books and works of art, until the entire church was broken up and distributed throughout the peoples of the world. For those portions of the church, all manner of crimes were committed in its name. Countries were ravaged by war, hatreds engendered, people were tortured and put to death in the name of God and religion. What part then, asked Bueller, is the right part to give you a more favorable entry into the kingdom of heaven? The time will come when, through knowledge and spiritual understanding, the peoples will bring their part of God's love and join it with that from others. In this way, the Church of All Saints will be rebuilt, and man, through his free will and love, discover the truth that God is love, and all will live together in happy communion in God's sight. That is our task. That is that of right against evil, to bring all mankind to accept the simple truth and so emancipate the nations from enmity and fear, by demonstrating that man is not an earthly animal but is akin to spirit in this life now. Both of you, John and Mary, are set to this purpose, and as you gather wisdom and become far-seeing, so you will find your way to hasten the day when once again the light will shine from the Church of All Saints onto the farthest corner of the universe, And then, with the joining together of divine purposes in both ways of life, we shall begin to live as God intended us to in the beginning. So be it, said the priest. If ever you feel that I can help you further along the avenue you choose, then I shall be here. Please remember, there is no way in which you can measure your own spiritual advancement. There are no lines to cross to separate one state from another. There are no different planes of spirituality to which you have a right to ascend. The plane of spiritual progression is not a staircase, but rather like an upward spiral, giving you greater strength to give to all souls the happiness and right of seeking new values and earning spiritual progression through service, understanding, and experience. The intense struggle between good and evil is in those conditions nearest to earth life. It is there the fight is fiercest to bring newcomers to see the light of goodness and happiness, to join in with the efforts constantly made by doctors, scientists, psychologists, and many, many others of good heart, carrying out God's intentions so that every soul can discover its own way of progression over sin, sickness, evil, and all other baseness. This was published in 1976. Let me read this again. To join in with the efforts constantly made by doctors, scientists, psychologists, and many, many others of good heart, inshallah, carrying out God's intention to serve every soul, can discover its own way of progression over sin, sickness, evil, and all other baseness. Then, when you have earned by your labors inner peace, to give you the right to spiritual wisdom, to study the greater beauties of art, color, life, literature, and all the kindred crafts you will meet on the way, so you will have the future of an unlimited horizon you both can travel towards together, going forward to unending happiness and fulfillment of God's purpose in you. So glory be. It was with these final words that Beulah merged in with the radiance and was no longer seen. John and Mary went homewards with their heart and minds too full for conversation. So this was the end of chapter 10. The animal kingdom and traveling is chapter 11, which will be the next one. This is eerily similar to the account of Anthony Borgia, who channeled the life of the priest Robert Hugh Benson, who died in 1914, which was entitled Life in the World Unseen, which I thoroughly enjoyed reading last year, and it's all on this channel, well, on my BitChute, where I will upload this now. I'm ending this. Have a lovely Sunday. Bye bye.